When you first launch Keyframe Pro 2, the application automatically creates a new project with an empty default timeline active in the viewer. To begin working, we need to load media files into the project, and there are a few ways this can be done. First is through the main menu by selecting File, Import Files, or Import Folder. Here I'll select Import Files, and I'll select a single media file. Alternatively, you can simply drag and drop files from Explorer into the project view, the timeline view, if you have a timeline active, or the main viewer. When dropping on the viewer, this will both import the media and open it in the viewer. For now, though, I will simply drop on the project view to keep the default timeline active. Once imported, these files are added to the Sources folder in the project view, and they are also automatically added to the active default timeline. It is helpful to think of a source as the actual media file, while a timeline acts as a playlist of sources. Both sources and timelines can be opened in the viewer, and when active in a viewer, the viewer letter is displayed next to the name in the project view. In this case, you can see the letter A next to the default timeline, indicating that it is active in the A viewer. Now, with the default timeline active in the A viewer, any source in that timeline becomes available in the viewer, and the list of sources can be seen in the Timeline panel at the bottom of the sidebar when the Sources tab is selected. If you would like to view a specific source on its own, simply double-click on that source in the project view. After doing this, the letter A appears next to the source that was just loaded, indicating that it is active in the viewer. When a source is active in the A viewer, the timeline view switches to display the source properties, such as the file location, the source in and out points, and more. To return to the timeline sequence, as before, you can double-click on it in the project view, or drag and drop from the project view onto the viewer itself. Once the timeline is loaded, as you scrub using the time control, you'll see all of the sources added to this timeline. Additionally, double-clicking on a source in the timeline panel, so sources that are part of the timeline, will jump to the first frame for that source in the timeline. Finally, the list of sources that make up a timeline can be modified through the timeline view when that timeline is loaded in the A viewer. The order can be changed by selecting a source and using the buttons at the top of the timeline view to change the order, or you can simply select an item and drag and drop it in the list to give it a new position. Sources can be deleted from the timeline by selecting the source, in this case shot 3, and clicking the delete button at the top of the timeline view, or by hitting the delete key on your keyboard. And new sources can be added to the timeline by dragging and dropping a source from the list in the project view. So here I'll add shot 3 back to the timeline again, or by dragging and dropping from File Explorer onto the timeline view.